Hi guys, this is IGCSE O-Level Chemistry, paper 22, Extended MCQs, June 2022, question 11. The diagram shows the electrolysis of aqueous copper to sulfate using inert electrodes. Which arrow shows the movement of electrons in the circuit? So electrons would be produced at the anode because anode is where oxidation occurs and oxidation is loss of electrons. So loss of electrons here is from the anode. So electrons will move away from the anode. So this is the direction of movement of electrons. So when they move like this, they would head towards the cathode. And the only arrow with electrons heading towards the cathode is given in option B, making B the correct option for this question. Question 12. Which row identifies a chemical change and a physical change? Okay, chemical change. Boiling ethanol. Boiling ethanol will change its state, which is a physical change and not a chemical change. Burning ethanol. Burning ethanol is combustion. So this is a chemical change. Dissolving ethanol in water is ethanol basically forming an aqueous solution of ethanol. So this is a physical change. They can be separated using distillation or fractional distillation. Evaporating ethanol. Evaporating ethanol is again changing its state from liquid to gas, which is a physical change, not a chemical change. Now, looking at the physical changes, burning ethanol is combustion of ethanol, which is a chemical change. Evaporating ethanol is a physical change because we are changing the state from liquid to gas. Burning ethanol again is a chemical change because combustion is a chemical change. And dissolving ethanol in water is a physical change because an aqueous solution of ethanol will form. So the question has asked us which row identifies a chemical change and a physical change. So we can see a chemical change only in option B, and we have a physical change corresponding to it in option B as well, making B the correct option for this question. Question 13. Which statements explain why increasing the concentration of a reactant increases the rate of reaction? Okay, so statement one, it increases the collision rate of particles. Yes, because as the number of reactant particles increases, the collision between the reactant particles would also increase. So this is correct. Statement two, it lowers the activation energy. Concentration has nothing to do with change in the value of activation energy. This can only be affected by introduction of a catalyst. So this statement becomes incorrect. Next, a greater proportion of the colliding molecules have required activation energy. This is achieved by introducing a catalyst which lowers the requirement of activation energy and not by changing the concentration. And the last statement, there are more particles per unit volume. Yes, more reactant particles per unit volume. So this is also correct. So since statements 1 and 4 are correct, option B becomes the correct option for this question. Question 14. When the colorless gas N2O4 is heated, it forms the brown gas NO2. When the reaction mixture is cooled, the brown color fades and turns back to colorless. Which type of reaction is described by these observations? Decomposition? No. If it was decomposition, then only the brown gas would have remained and it would not have returned to the colorless gas. Displacement? No. There is no other reactant involved. There is a single reactant and a single product. Reduction? This we can check. N2O4 and NO2. In N2O4, we've got oxygen with a 2 negative charge. So total charge would be 4 times 2 is 8 minus 8. And in order to balance minus 8, and we have 2 nitrogen atoms. So it would be plus 8 divided by 2. Therefore, charge of plus 4 on one nitrogen atom in N2O4. Coming to NO2, again, oxide ion would have a charge of minus 2. So total charge minus 4. So in order to balance this minus 4 charge, and since there is only one nitrogen atom present, it would have a charge of plus 4. So nitrogen has a charge of +4 in N2O4 and a charge of +4 in NO2. So reduction is not involved. And next, it's a reversible reaction. Yes, because we have colorless gas going to a brown gas when the temperature is increased or when it is heated, and the brown gas going back to the colorless gas when the temperature is decreased. So this is what is known as a reversible reaction, making option D the correct option for this question. Question 15. Water is added to anhydrous copper 2 sulfate. What happens during the reaction? The copper 2 sulfate turns blue and the solution formed gets colder. So water and hydrous copper 2 sulfate is white in color. So on addition of water, it will turn blue and water will become part of the lattice structure. That means bond formation is taking place and bond formation gives off energy. So when energy is given off, the environment becomes hotter, not colder. So copper sulfate turning blue is correct, but the solution form gets colder is incorrect. Next, copper sulfate turns blue, yes, and the solution form gets hotter, yes. The copper sulfate turns white, no, it is already white, and the solution gets colder, no. The copper sulfate turns white, no. The solution gets hotter, yes. So the only statement with both changes mentioned correctly is B, making B the correct option for this question. Question 16. Which arrow on the energy level diagram shows the overall energy change for an endothermic reaction? Overall energy change is represented by a delta H, and the delta H is the difference between the energies of the reactants and the energies of the products. And since the energy of the product is at a greater value than the energy of the reactant, so the arrow should be pointing upwards and not downwards. So this makes arrow D incorrect and arrow B correct. Arrow A represents the activation energy of this reaction, and arrow C has no particular energy representation. So the correct option for this question is option B. Question 17. When a hydrogen oxygen fuel cell is in operation, a different reaction happens at each electrode. At the hydrogen electrode, hydrogen forms H positive ions and 2 moles of electrons are given off. At the oxygen electrode, oxygen reacts with water and gain 4 electrons and is converted into 4 moles of OH negative ions. Okay. The electrons that are lost at the hydrogen electrode travel through the external circuit to the oxygen electrode, where they are gained by the oxygen and water. Okay. A hydrogen oxygen fuel cell is operated for a period of time and 4 moles of oxygen molecules are consumed. Which mass of hydrogen is consumed? Okay, so if we have 1 mole of oxygen being consumed, it requires 4 electrons, and 1 mole of hydrogen is producing 2 electrons. That means we would need 2 moles of hydrogen per mole of oxygen to be consumed so that the number of electrons balance. So oxygen is to hydrogen, the ratio is 1 is to 2. And the question says if we have 4 moles of hydrogen being consumed, therefore the moles of hydrogen being consumed would be 2 times 4, which is equal to 8 moles. And now they want the mass. So N is equal to M upon MR. So we need the mass. Mass would be moles into MR. The moles of hydrogen is 8 and the MR of H2 is equal to 2. This is from the periodic table. So 8 times 2 equals 16 grams. Therefore, the correct option for this question is option D. Question 18. The oxides of two elements X and Y are separately dissolved in water and the pH of each solution tested. So oxide of X gives a pH of 1, so it is acidic. and the oxide of Y gives a pH of 13, making it basic. Okay, what information about X and Y is correct? Oxide is acidic. That would be true for X, eliminating options C and D. And oxide is basic would be Y. So both options A and B have Y as the basic oxide. Now, an acidic oxide would be an oxide formed by reaction of oxygen and a metal. So X, no, that would be basic. That would be basic. That would be basic, not acidic. So the basic like NaOH, sodium hydroxide, or Na2O, sodium oxide. So sodium is a metal. So the metal has to be Y and not X, and X has to be a non-metal in order for an acid to form, because HCl, both the hydrogen and the chlorine atoms are atoms of non-metals. So non-metal has to be X. This is true in option B, eliminating option A, making option B the correct option for this question. Question 19. An acid is neutralized by adding an excess of an insoluble solid base. A soluble salt is formed. How is the pure salt obtained from the reaction mixture? Okay, so we have a soluble salt forming and we are adding an insoluble base. So the first thing that needs to be done is to filter the solution in order to separate the soluble salt from the insoluble solid base. So the first step should be filtration, which is present in options C and D, eliminating options A and B. Next should be, now the options are whether we crystallize and then evaporate, or first evaporate and then crystallize. Since we have a soluble salt, we need to get rid of the water before we crystallize it. So evaporation will come before crystallization. This makes option C incorrect and option D correct. Therefore, D is the correct option for this question. Question 20. Substance J takes part in a redox reaction. In the reaction, J gains electrons. Okay, if J is gaining electrons, so it is being reduced. Which statement is correct? J is the oxidizing agent because it is being reduced, and it is oxidized in the reaction. No, it is reduced. J is the oxidizing agent. Yes, an oxidizing agent undergoes reduction during the reaction, and it is reduced in the reaction. Yes. Next, J is a reducing agent. Incorrect. And is oxidized. This is also incorrect. J is a reducing agent. Incorrect, and it is reduced. This is correct. So the option with both the correct statements, J is an oxidizing agent and it is reduced in the reaction, is present in option B, making B the correct option for this question.